Okay, my friends, this is Yale's paper about these organisms, which I call mud fossils. They call them Ediacara organisms. Now, they really are proving the Bible. You're going to see right in front of you. They say, are these organisms, these Ediacara organisms, which are these mud fossils, are they some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? And yes, they were. Because it wiped out all the creatures on the face of the earth almost, which is what they claim in the ancient texts, and they were replaced. It was the earliest community of complex sea creatures lived in a warm, slimy, planetary Petri dish, which means the flood of the entire world. So the entire world is covered with water at this time, which is a slimy, planetary Petri dish. It nurtured a broad array of exotic species, and then they all died off in the Triassic era. All right? So this is their paper written about it. I'm going to read to you what they say about these organisms, and I show that these are the things that they always called rocks. That are not rocks, they are literally body parts. In many cases, some of them are sedimentary runoff and so forth, but that is a rock. And I have body parts from giant creatures. So the things that were written in the past said there was a worldwide flood that killed all the animals, basically. And this is what they're saying. And it also says that Yale and so forth, they say that there's 3 layers in the Triassic era, which is this, when this happened. There's red bed, gray clay, and black cap. And I'm going to go into this in a smidge of detail, and then I'm just going to show you what's been discovered is just nothing but mud fossils. Okay, my friends, let's jump right into it. Exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures promoted by silica-rich oceans. Ediacara biota means this region that they found these exceptionally preserved fossils. Now, here's the key takeaway here. These were in a terminal Ediacara strata worldwide. Everybody in the entire world, all these animals died, and they were exceptionally preserved. In many cases, not every place in the world, but in almost all cases, they were exceptionally preserved. But they were always considered rocks, like this right here. You'd say, oh, that's a rock. No, that is actually a lung. It's been DNA tested. It's been CAT scanned. The DNA came deep from inside of here, and it can be retested. There's nothing here that is not testable. And it's flat like a pancake, and most of my Ediacara organisms are, because they died in the flood, such as this species that nobody knows about now, because it's called a noto. And we have a number of these and a number of different configurations which indicate that there was some kind of crazy evolution going on at some time in the recent, or in some past. And this is the type of fossilization. That is a bone. That's not just a rock. Any anatomist or anybody that knows what a bone looks like can tell you that's a bone. And it broke off right there. Now, these have been considered rocks, and they are no longer considered rocks. They are considered body parts by Yale and everybody else. And they say that it happened in a worldwide area. I mean, on the entire world, they say it's like a slimy Petri dish. Well, it was a giant flood. This has all been written about. And it says it consists of exceptionally preserved soft body forms, and they're creatures. They're not just, they say they were just jellyfish and there was no bones and so forth, which obviously you see that's not true. They just, at this point, do not understand it, and I have a lot to add to it. So here's the paper that they wrote on campus to tout this discovery. I'm going to home in on this, and we're going to read this paper, and I'm going to try to explain to you what the paper is literally saying. Some of it's a little bit vague for the average person to understand what they're literally admitting to, that there was a whole nother era before the Great Flood. And I don't think they're going to dispute that. If they do, I'd like to hear the dispute, because this is, they're just, well, I'll read you what it says. Actually, well, I'll read it to you. Okay, my friends, so what does mainstream have to say about exceptional preservation, as you see before you, of soft-body creatures? They say it's promoted by silica-rich oceans. Silica-rich, which they have no explanation for why so much silicon was in the water at this time. And the oceans covered the entire world at this particular time, because this is a worldwide event. In this strata, worldwide. And they are the first, claim they're the earliest fossilized, complex organisms. So these are first creatures on Earth, and then they all died off, and then they asked, is this a failed evolutionary experiment? And I believe that's correct. That's exactly what it was. Now, this is from the paper about the Ediacara organisms. It says, this is from Yale again, are the Ediacara organisms some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? And they say these fossils, the animals themselves at this particular time, they claim, were entirely soft-bodied, like jellyfish. They lived before the evolution of shells, teeth, or bones, which we can see that is not correct, which are typically the only parts of an organism to become fossilized. After the Great Flood, they don't understand the silicon, the heavy salts, and the extreme heat. The oceans boiled. That's why we have 3 layers: red bed, gray clay, and black cap. The red bed is literally the boiled flesh, which is heavier. It has the metals in it, and it sinks as clay. And above that is the gray clay. So the red bed is the flesh, the red flesh from these creatures. Literally the red flesh boiled off and create a worldwide red bed. Then, as things settled, the gray clays settled on top of the red bed, which is the gray clay is the rest of the body parts and trees and all that stuff that's not as dense and heavy as clay. It's settled on top as a layer of gray clay. Then, as all of the fallout from the burning and all that combustion, volcanoes, you had a black cap. And I have those here in my shop. And I actually have one that has a human footprint right in the middle of it, which tells you 2 things. Humans were here, and it's a similar footprint to this, but not the same. Humans were here at that time, and the Triassic era had to have happened within hours. Literally, almost. The red bed was still wet when the guy stepped on the gray clay and pushed it through the red bed. I've shown this a number of times, and it's quite obvious what it is. It's 3 layers and a human footprint pushing the gray clay down through the red bed, and then the black cap came on. And I'm sure there's more out there where I took it from, but I just have the one, and I'll show it to you. So there's a lot of things that I have shown that their research is not correct. There was bones. There was absolutely bones. And there was lungs, which are human lungs. This is a human lung, and it's the same size as ours. And it's flat like this because of the flood. And it boiled all the flesh off and left the organs. You know, this could be all tested out. And I'm doing a little research right now on some unfortunate mice that are in silicates, and we're going to see what happens there. But then, of course, there was the feet. And, you know, that's where the tibia comes down, that round spot, and it rocks in this cradle as the foot goes up and down. And this is where the fibula, which is the extra bone, you have 2 bones coming up. And the extra bone sits here, so you can wiggle around like that and do all the things you have to do for your foot. Now, these don't have toes in them that I can tell. I mean, they might have toes in them, but they're not separated. We have many of these that have the toes shown separated, but I believe they were always like this at one time. Anyway, there's a lot to look at, just like they said. They understand. There's nothing like this stuff that exists today. Many are outright bizarre. Many of them are outright bizarre. This is Yale saying this. and they don't resemble any organism alive today. I can show you things that are so bizarre, they'll blow your mind. But the problem is they're so bizarre, and they prove there was giants and there was creatures here that nobody can explain, that mainstream will not discuss it because it upends the things that we've been told. But I mean, if truth is truth, and it is, this is literally a hair follicle from a giant creature. I don't know how big it was actually, to be honest, but this is 2 inches wide. There's nothing alive today that has a 2-inch wide hair follicle. And if you think it's not a hair follicle, hold on 1 second. Okay, zillionth time, a rector pili muscle attaches right to there. That would have been hooked right to there, and it would pulled in and let you move your hair up and down. Now, there's an Euler gland here, which is called the sebaceous gland. This is called the erector pili muscle, just in case you want to make a test out of it. Now, so this squirts juice onto the hair, and that's where the hair comes up the top. Now, this is where the hair originates at the bottom, the hair root ball. Right there. So don't forget, this is the sebaceous gland. See it? You see the globby stuff? It was higher up on the stalk, and when it eroded out, it sort of, and the stalk fell off, and it just globbed down right there. But that is it. Now, this is the stalk, and this is the bottom 2 little dots there, which are the hair papillae. So I don't think anybody can dispute that this is a hair follicle. Now, I don't think anybody can dispute that it is pretty good size. Now, could this be DNA tested? I think it's possible, because if you drilled up into where these things, we're looking at this right here, right there. Can you see that? Yes, you can. Right there, those 2 little dots. This is blood. If you drilled right in there, excuse me, a little stuffy there. If you drilled right up in there, it's possible you could get some form of blood out of there. And you're inside. That's the key. You have to go inside. You can't just scrub it off the surface and say, oh, I found blood. No, absolutely not. You have to go for it. Okay, my friends, the entire world was covered with an ocean at this one time because it was the Great Flood. And these are the kind of creatures they're talking about. They're little slimy looking things, but there was, as I showed you, mud fossils, which are human creatures and all kinds of different animals, I suppose. And I think I showed you the hair follicle. I have DNA tests that support my statements about my mud fossils. And I had 3 of them done. I sent the extracted particulates, and I did it very, very well, and I did it inside deeply. It wasn't swabbed off the surface or anything like that. It was carefully done, and they were dense and excellent quality. And this was quite some time ago, and so this is empirical evidence. Now, this is PCR DNA test. This is top-end stuff. And it came, they did everything. They did all these primers and checked for negative controls, and there was no negative control problems. Everything was good, and it showed up that there was excellent quality DNA sequences obtained from these samples. The 2 of the samples were excellent. The other one was okay, but not excellent. And these what it was: Homo sapien, mitochondrial, cytochrome B, and D loop region. Both of them. And they were like this long. This was one of them right here. All right, and this can be retested. And we could just scrape it and drill deep inside and take the deepest part you want and retest it. I'm not going to do it again. This was expensive, and it was rejected because it was just rejected. And this is as deep as it gets as far as a DNA test goes. And that goes back to 2015. So, anyway, it shows that the Ediacara biota weren't just jellyfish. They were all kinds of creatures that died, and yes, it does appear to be that it was a failed evolutionary experiment, as you can see by the giant body parts. And I also have other giants. One of these is a 3-foot fingertip. A fingertip 3 foot long. has a fingernail, has fingerprints and everything on it, and the DNA was dense and excellent quality. Okay, the first thing is blood from a rock. This would be considered a rock, but if you know anatomy, you can understand this is not a rock, this is the head of a bone. And it would have come down here and made a normal looking bone coming straight down, but it broke off. And the last little bit of bone is still there. There is a taste of bone there, you can see with the microscope. Now, inside these bone foramen, they have to be fed with blood. This is inside of one of these bone foramens here. Now, all I did was, when you take them out of the ground, they're still encased in mud, which literally is just flesh. If there's blood inside here, it will come out. It just happens. So there was blood in this one here. I took it out of the ground, and it sat around, and just blood came out. So can I prove that's blood, or is that just iron oxides? Well, they say, well, that's just iron oxide. I say, well, iron oxide is from blood. And I said, well, how can you prove that? And I said, well, I see a scab there. And they said, well, it looks like a scab, but it's iron oxide. I said, okay, well, your blood is made from iron primarily. Now, what if there was fibrin under that, what I call blood clot? And they say, well, what is fibrin? I said, well, it's right there. That's the fabric that coats the underneath so the blood can lock into it and create the scab. That's what creates a scab. If not, it wouldn't have anything to lock onto. So this gives you a membrane, it's literally a membrane between the outer blood and the inner blood, and it creates that new layer, and the scab goes away, and this goes away, and then you get down to this point where you can, this is when I just peeled it right off. Now, what are we looking at here? The scab was right here. The whole scab was there. I pushed the scab out of the way, and the white fabric was here. I pushed the white fabric out of the way, and what was underneath the white fabric is this. There's a hole here and a hole here. And coming out of this hole comes up here, and that little black tube, you see that little black tube? That's the vein. Veins are black. Arteries are red. You see the artery? So your blood is continuing on from this bone to the next bone or out to the muscle or wherever it's going. But you need to get blood inside the bone. And then you need to get it back out. It's just the way it works. Okay, so what have we seen so far? We've seen a gigantic hair follicle, so we know there was giants. Or something was gigantic. I don't know what it was, but I do know this was giant. And that's a giant fingertip. Now, take your time and look at it. Let's zoom in a smidge. All right, so here, what do we have here? That, my friends, is the tip of the finger. That's the front of the fingernail. That's actually a fingernail. You see it's coming down here, and it's a little bit eroded here, and it comes back up. This piece is missing, and the only reason it's missing is because I took a sledgehammer and hit it, like 8-pound sledge, and it popped off just like a scab would. And it's because it's glued as grip skin to the flesh underneath. And I'll show you this in a second. And that still had the fingerprints on it. This right here, that little circle, is the cartilage that goes in between bones so they don't scrape on each other. That's what that is, so that they can do that. Now, vein and artery, fingernail, grip skin, which is the fingerprints. The fingerprints are right on there, sweat pores and everything. Now, that's 3 feet long. From the very back to the very tip in the front is 3 feet long. And that was DNA tested, excellent quality DNA. And now I'll show you the fingerprints that were right here. All right, so don't forget. Right here I broke it off, and this is what I did break off. Right here. So what is that? The fingernail was right up here. right? It went basically up in this area. And very close to your fingernail, your fingerprints start. They start right next to it. This is one of the finger ridges. It's very clear. You can see those two little dots. You see them? Boom, boom. Those are actually sweat pores in that ridge. Now my thumb is about the same width as one fingerprint ridge. Now you see all the little dots in the fingerprint ridges? That's the way they are. These little dots, you see, dot, 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 those are the sweat pores. And what do you see here? Dot, dot. There was a whole batch more. I couldn't move that stone, and I don't own that stone anymore. I sold the property that it was on, so I have no access to it. But that is a sweat pore, and that is a sweat pore. And I was looking at them the other day, and I swear to God this is true. I washed this thing down. I was looking at it in a microscope, and it was dry, and all of a sudden water squirted out of the sweat pores. I'm not kidding you. It must have got in there somehow, and it didn't really splash out, but it just leaked all over. And I have the video showing that. But this is the grip skin, and it just peels right off here. It just peels right off. And as a matter of fact, here it is right here. Oh, I gotta find it. Hold on. All right. Let me see if I can. All right, this is, I believe this is the bottom part here. The top part fits here. But these are the two sweat pores right there. Boom, boom. And I was looking at it, washed it all down, and I was looking at it from this side to see how, because they have to come through, and they do. And you can see them pretty clearly. And I put a little water on there, and I washed everything up good. It's sitting here dry. I'm watching the microscope, and all of a sudden water goes, bloop. I said, what the hell happened there? And it was coming out of the bottom of the sweat pore. Sweat pore goes from here down, and it takes the sweat out. Well, this must have, somehow that water must have infused itself into the sweat pores and sort of held it there for a second, where after it dried up, it just leaked right out. And they're right up in this area. You can see them pretty clearly in a microscope. But you see how that's almost like a scab. That's not like it fractured off a stone or anything. That is this grip skin. It's right there. It's that stuff right there. You see how thick that is? This guy got pretty thick skin. All right, so this is a giant fingertip, and it's DNA tested. Guys, it was DNA tested, because stone is a whole different thing than we thought. All right, here's the deal with stone. I showed you, blood comes out of it. I mean, that's just the way it is. And why does blood come out of bones and stones and stuff? This is saturated with stone, with blood. Now, when this thing got in the Great Flood, the fascia that surrounds everything, which is the collagens, they turned into feldspar, and it just coated everything like this guy's foot. And that is a foot. And there's a tibia right there, and the fibula sits here. There's the arch of the foot. It even looks like it has, a sole built into it. But this is I believe it's a foot. It's not a shoe. And all these things I'm showing you have petrified in a manner that is exceptional, truly exceptional, and it still is not looked at, because it's so exceptional. It overthrows everything, and that really is always a problem when you bring something new that causes the powers to be to sort of lose status a little bit. I'm not trying to make anybody lose status. I just want them to start investigating it, that's all. All right, so don't forget, this is the grip skin, and it just popped right off of there. You're going to see that again in another specimen I have. Now, this fingertip is 3 feet long, 3 feet long. Now, watch this. This is a hand that was also found on my property. From here to here, I think it's about 3 feet wide. Up here, I think it's about 4 feet, somewhere around there. And this is the bumper pad. It's a left hand. put your hand back like this. Look at this spot right here is the bumper pad. If you know what to look for, you can see that there's a bone right here. There's a bone right down in here that matches up on your hand to this other bone that comes up to meet with it. And that's that bone. There's a couple of them right in this area, but there's a lot of bones in your hand. I mean, a lot. Now, this is the pad that comes around and wraps over to your small little finger. So that goes right to there, that bumper. All right, now you see this silvery looking stuff? Like peeling off. It looks like somebody painted it or something and the paint is just peeling off, you see it? And it's a different color than the flesh underneath there. This is what's called grip skin. And that's the stuff that I showed you peeled off of the other gigantic fingertip. And it's only found on the pads of your feet and your toes and your fingers and I think on your elbows and stuff like that where you have your really scruffy skin. Really, this is tough stuff. And there's a ton of silicone in it. And it just peels right off because it's not really, it's meant to be expendable. That is what protects this stuff down here because you're always banging it, you're scrubbing with it, you're scraping this, it's in water, it's in, who knows where it's in. I mean, I've had my hands in a lot of things. Now, that's what it is. And here, this is what it is. It just peels right off. So that's what I was showing on a big hand. And I have fingertips from that, and it's been CAT scanned, the fingertips, and the DNA has been done on it. So all three of the things I just showed you have had DNA tests on them. All right, this is the key to my preservation where I am. I am in this basin, and this is the origins of dinosaur dominance in the Connecticut Valley Rift Basin. Now, what does that basin mean? It means I'm in a bowl. It boiled, and all the creatures just were preserved fabulously. And this is the formation, is the red bed, the gray clay above it, and the black cap on top. That's as much as you need to know about this. And the whole world, because this is the Triassic. Tri means three, red, gray, black. And it's the whole world. It's a worldwide strata, they call it. So it happened all at the same time, and it was because of the Great Flood. And I can explain that, and it's very easily explained once you understand and you read Velikovsky, who did research on what all the ancient peoples wrote. And they were alive at the time that this actually happened, this, what they call a Triassic. This was not that long ago. And we were almost impacted by a comet, which turned out to be Venus. And it literally boiled the atmosphere, combusted it, burnt everything, the trees, everything, complete the waters in the ocean went all over, and it sucked up all the stuff from the bottom of the ocean, which is the siliceous ooze. And that's what caused this silicon rich oceans. The siliceous ooze it came up because silicon is 2.5 times denser than water, but it still creates a fluidy ooze. And when the Earth got wrenched by the impact of our atmosphere into Venus, I don't think we actually collided, but all the waters covered the whole Earth and created the slimy Petri dish that they talk about worldwide, and had caused all these exceptionally preserved soft-bodied creatures. And they were not strictly jellyfish, as you can obviously see. Now, can I prove this happened and there was actual creatures here during the Triassic? And yes, I can, and I'll show you that right now. And it relates to this right here. It relates to this right here, which is this footprint right here, which I'm going to show you. I'm squirt some water on it and you'll see. But this footprint, there's the balls of the guy's foot, and that's where his heel hit. He hit like this, and he was running to try to get the hell out of town because the Triassic era was in progress. And he pushed his foot with this gray clay down through the red bed. So now the bottom of this foot is down at the bottom. That's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to be gray over the top of the red. Well, both the red and the gray were still wet because his foot is obviously impressed into the gray. I mean, push the gray down through the red. And I'll show you on the side, you can see the gray is below the red, and that is not supposed to be. That is not supposed to be. It's supposed to be the other way around, a gray on top. Now, I also have the black cap that came on here, which is absolutely flawlessly perfect. It sits right on there. Now, it's kind of heavy. I don't want to carry it over here again, but as a matter of fact, I think I show it in here. Yeah, here it is right here. There's the black cap, and that sat right on top of here. And I found this all together in one shot. I have so much stuff here, it's stunning. It really is stunning. And these little things right here, these are so cool. This must have been wet and gooey, because when it hit, he went, and I call them these suck-ups. Now, if you can see on the edges here, there's virtually no dimply looking things, but look in the middle, it's all from where he hit. It looks like the guy's face doesn't, his eyes, that's a ball of the feet. Now when he went, he was hitting so hard, he would run, bam, and he went this way and slurped up that. That threw me for a loop. I said, how could that happen? Why would it create that upward shot there, you know? Was his foot wrapped around that thing? That threw me for a loop. But now this is what I'm seeing. Here's my interpretation of what happened. This guy was hiding out somewhere, and everything sort of was settling in. And the fallout was starting to come down. So the Triassic must have happened like on a weekend. That's about it. The red bed is still totally saturatedly wet, just mud. The gray clay is just laying on top of it, still mud, but firm. He comes running, his heel hits here, bam. His toes, which are, I don't think he had toes, I think he was a no-toe, like this thing right here, no-toe. And he hit there and kept running. And when he did, push this back this way, because he's going to lift off. That's the only way I can come up with a solution that would cause that. But the rest is quite obvious what happened here. That's it, the balls of his... All right, again, this is the no-toes, like this, mine, and then Tish Egerton found a whole ton of these that are eroded, like eroded down. There might be toes in here, I don't know. But hers have this kind of a structure inside the foot, which is springs and not bones. That's the heel right there. That's the strap that runs up to the tibia. This is the tibia right here. And that strap runs down to the heel. This is it. But it has springs in it. They're not bones. We have bones. Now, so that's what she found was these ones that have the eroded toes. Maybe I call them erodito. But they're no toes. They're just eroded. That's all. Now, check this out. This is so cool. This is the bottom of a foot. You see that? You see that? There's a big ball there. The Calcaneoustuberosity. There's a ball there. Well, big deal, Roger. What does that mean? Well, guess what? There's a ball right there. This is the bottom of a no-toe. There's the Calcaneoustuberosity. And they all have a similar look. This has a little more substance to it. That one there's eroded quite a bit, but this would have probably that ball right there. I don't know. It looks like a ball to me, you see it? I'd say that's the Calcaneoustuberosity, but a lot of flesh still left over the top of it, because that wouldn't stick out like that. The one I showed you before, the anatomical, your foot doesn't stick out like that either. You got a lot of flesh around it, which this still has. This is the guy's body. It's laying all over the place. All right, so this stuff I'm showing you is hard to dispute. You know, I'd like to discuss it, but there's that Calcaneoustuberosity. What else can I show you here? Look at these. Check this out. That's opalized. Now, I don't know. Somebody just sent me these pictures. It looks like a little basket. I don't know how big they are. They do look like some types of tips of fingers or something. I don't know. They had a bunch of them. I really don't know exactly what to think about that. I don't see anything that I can absolutely say. There's no question whatsoever those are fingertips. I will say they're quite likely some kind of body part or something. Now, these like claws or something? I don't know. Things I have are just like normal fingertips and so forth. They're, like here's a little tiny fingertip. You see this? That's a fingertip about the same size as mine, not much difference. You see that red spot right there? That red is because that's the artery side. The blood coming down the artery will blow out if it has no place to go. And it blew out. And this is what's inside. You see all the crystals and everything? And that's what a fingernail was. Hold on. A little water always sparks them up a little bit. You see that? That's the fingertip, just like mine. Could be just like that, I don't know. But that's the blood. That's the blood seeping out. This thing died like this. And I know that for a fact. Because that blood ran out here. It had no place else to go. It just popped right out the front of the fingertip. And then it settled right here. If in the microscope you see very easily, that's all red blood settled. So it just died probably about like this. Because it settled back to about this far back. So I would say it died right about like that in orientation. Now, where is the blood coming from? Well, it's coming out of an artery. And where is the artery? Well, it's on the side of the fingertip. You see it right here, right at the very end. They popped right out. All right, they have an artery and they have a vein right at the end. They both have it, one on each side. All your fingers, all your toes, same thing. These are the terminus of the blood supply. At the very end, that's where they turn around and come back, basically. They do it a lot of other places, too. But this is the terminus of your arms, of your legs. It's the other end where blood's got to come back somehow. And it's got to be fed somehow. So the blood comes in, she comes back.